When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. I got another good episode for you here today. Vince Field. He is an author. He has hit the bestseller charts in 3 different categories on Amazon for his book, which I have to pull up my notes. It's a lengthy title. Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming, Spiritual Revelations and Out-of-Body Experiences in Higher Dimensions. That sounds like it's right up my alley. Now, admit I have not had a chance to read this book yet, but it is on my list of things to do. Like I said, it's a bestseller on Amazon. Vince Field, check him out. Today he's going to come on the show and go into his personal experiences that he's had, everything that he writes about and more. He says that he has mapped out non-physical reality in a way that we can understand. So I could not be more intrigued. He's had revelations. He's had astral projection. He has out-of-body experiences. Show me more, okay? I want to know all about that world. What's on the other side? What's on the other side of the veil? So we're going to bring him on. I hope you enjoy this as much as I know I will. Let's get Vince on. Let's do some talking. While we wait for him to join us, I just sent a link to him, so it might take him just a second. But while we wait, if you have a story you want to share, if there's anything you want to talk about, if it's, the unexplained, monsters, paranormal, spiritual warfare, miracles, curses, whatever, anything that you want to discuss, any kind of personal experience that some would consider fringe or out of the norm, please feel free to reach out to me like Vince did. You can email me at thebumppodcast@gmail.com. You can go to thebumppodcast.com, go to the holler at me section, send me a message there. You can get a hold of me on Instagram. You can get a hold of me on Facebook Messenger. There's a million ways, but the most reliable, the way I know I'll be able to get back to you the easiest would be to go through Gmail. Okay, so the bumppodcast@gmail.com. Other ways of communication, they might get lost in the shuffle. I'm constantly on here trying to find emails. I'm catching up with some people. If you're listening right now, you know that there's some people that I've talked to a couple months ago. I'm just not getting back in touch with. So I'm sorry for that. Things are just hectic. Summer vacation is busier than my regular scheduled work week. So because there's no schedule, and I do well with schedule. So I'm trying here. All right. So that's out of the way. Probably by the time you listen to this, I probably have already taken down my online store. Inflation, prices have gotten expensive. So the people I used, the company I used to do this, my merch, notify me that their prices are going up. They were already borderline ridiculous as far as prices go. That's why I didn't really push it a whole lot. So I'm shutting that down. Hopefully, sometime this summer, I will have a members only section on my website on the bumppodcast.com. I'm trying to find ways to streamline things. I'm going to streamline the merch. I want to try to get away from Patreon eventually, where everything is just through the site. I don't have to worry about it going anywhere else. Makes things easier for you. So let's go ahead and let's bring on Vince.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. My name is Vincent Field. I wrote the book Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming, Spiritual Revelations and Out-of-Body Experiences in Higher Dimensions. And today I'd like to share some of my experiences with you guys. I've had a lot of frightening paranormal experiences over the years. And I've also had some pretty positive, enlightening experiences too. And I thought maybe I'd give you guys some tips on how to have these experiences yourself.
That would be fantastic. I hate to interrupt you. I know you just got started, but if you have advice on how to do this, of how to astral project or have an out-of-body experience, I've been waiting for somebody like you to come on this show, man. I didn't know you had like a DIY. This is gonna be cool. Absolutely, definitely.
So I started having paranormal experiences when I was 14. This is when I first got into astral projection. But before I get into the experiences, I think it would be best if I explain the context of these experiences so that everyone understands exactly what's going on. So when I was 14, I started practicing astral projection, which is essentially a type of out-of-body experience in which your consciousness leaves the physical body and travels into higher dimensions of reality. So these dimensions are commonly called the astral dimension, although the astral dimension actually consists of a multitude of dimensions. So basically, reality exists in an entire spectrum of different dimensions, and these dimensions exist at different frequencies of energy. It's similar to how there's different frequencies of light, and we can only perceive a limited range of these frequencies. Like the rest of the light spectrum, like infrared and X-ray and microwave, these are invisible to us. So in the same way, there's all these higher dimensions of reality that are beyond our perception when we're grounded in the physical body. But when you have an out-of-body experience, your mind and your consciousness enter these higher dimensions. I also call these dimensions non-physical dimensions or non-physical reality, because they exist beyond the physical dimension. So like I said, these dimensions exist in a spectrum, and the closer the non-physical dimension is to the physical dimension, the more similar it appears to the physical world. And I consider these to be lower dimensions because they exist at a lower frequency on the spectrum of non-physical reality. And the farther the dimension is from the physical dimension, or the higher the frequency is compared to the physical dimension, the more reality starts to diverge from the physical world, and the more unique and unusual and abstract that dimension is. So when you start astral projecting, it's most common to project into the lower dimensions in the beginning of your practice. And as you develop, and gain experience, you begin to access higher dimensions. And I think I should also mention now that when you astral project, your consciousness transfers from the physical body into the energy body, or you could also call it the astral body or the spirit body. which is simply a non-physical body that you typically occupy during out-of-body experiences. So the energy body separates from the physical body. Now, during normal waking consciousness, the energy body is integrated with the physical body. During astral projection, it separates, and you navigate the astral dimension from within your energy body, just as we navigate the physical dimension from within our physical bodies. So if all that makes sense to everyone, then I can start sharing my experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Vince, I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
And just to help myself keep up, the audience is probably going to be way ahead of me on this, but when you say the easier ones to start off with are going into these lower frequencies, it's easier to go lower. Are these lower frequencies, does lower equal negative, like a descent?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is that correlation, certainly. Yeah, generally, the higher dimensions correlate with like states of love and joy and bliss, creativity, and like these higher states of consciousness. And yeah, it's typically in these lower dimensions where you will encounter negative entities. And so that's basically the context of these first experiences that I'm going to share with you, because in the beginning you're entering these lower realms, and there are some pretty nasty entities that exist there.
Yeah, man. Well, I do want to hear about this, especially if it can help someone else to know what's going on in their world, in their life. And you also mentioned the astral body, the non-physical self. Is that also what's referred to as, by some people as your soul? Or is your soul leaving your body, or is it some kind of like energy, like spiritual energy that's leaving your body?
Well, that's an interesting question, because different people and different lines of thought and belief have different concepts of what the soul actually is.
Right.
The way I see it, the soul is much more than just the energy body, because who we are as spiritual beings is so much more than just this physical body, and even the astral bodies that we explore the astral dimensions in. They're much higher levels of our consciousness, which we're not aware of. And so I would consider the soul to be kind of like the totality of all of these different aspects of who we are, a lot of which we're unaware of. So I wouldn't call it the soul.
Right.
But I think like a spirit body or energy body or astral body, I would consider those to be better terms for that.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation, man. I'm just trying to keep up with you. All right, brother. Let's do it. Go into your experiences.
Okay, sure. So my first paranormal experience was during one of my first out-of-body experiences. And what happened was I floated out of my body, and the room around me came into vision. And how this works is you're lying with your eyes closed, so you don't see anything. And when you project from your body, as you phase into another dimension, your sight and your perceptions of that dimension become activated. So I began to perceive the environment around me in this astral dimension. And the first thing I see is this huge dark figure standing next to my bed. And it was huge. It was probably like 7 feet tall. And it was basically just like a dark silhouette, like a big shadow, just standing there facing me. And I was absolutely terrified. And I was instantly pulled back into my body. Like my fear triggered this reflex that brought me back into my body automatically, almost like a kind of protection mechanism.
Right.
So I calmed down and I decided to give it another try. So I lifted out of my body again, and this shadow being was still there. Like it never left the side of my bed. Like it was just waiting for me. And I freaked out again and I snapped back into my body. And so I encountered these shadow people a lot in the early days of my astral projection practice. And they seem to exist in the lowest non-physical dimension, like the dimension that's just slightly higher than the physical dimension. And I almost always found them right next to me, like just waiting and watching me as I was separating from my body. Like somehow they would know that I was about to project from my body.
Yeah.
So sometimes they would just stand there looking at me, but other times they would like come towards me, like try to grab me. But over time, I discovered that if I just remained calm and ignored them and just continued with the experience, I would shift into a dimension that was higher than that dimension that they exist in, and they would be gone. And eventually I started to completely bypass this lower dimension during my projections, and I stopped encountering them altogether. But there was a good, I don't know, year or two where they were just always there. And it was definitely an obstacle to overcome. And I was never like harmed by these beings. It seemed like they kind of fed off of my fear. And I've heard similar reports by other out-of-body explorers. So yeah, it's definitely not just me. These things are out there. And it's hard to say exactly what their intentions are, but they definitely trigger this fear in most people. And they seem to enjoy that.
Yeah. I have a couple more questions just while you're talking.
Sure.
And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. I'm actually still writing one while I'm trying to ask it, because it makes sense to me. Can you slip into these lower dimensions, these lower frequencies, while you're conscious? Because people, sometimes report seeing these shadow people, these lower entities, even in your home, or while like out on a hike or whatever, people will see these shadow creatures. Is it possible to slip into this while you're conscious, or are these just things that are out of body?
Well, I don't have any personal experience of seeing these things in the physical world.
Right.
But like I said, they seem to exist in a dimension very close to the physical dimension, just slightly above it. So it would make sense to me that there could be some kind of like overlapping that takes place sometimes, and maybe your consciousness can, once in a while, kind of tap into that slightly higher level.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely think it's possible for sure.
Wow. Okay. I was just wondering, because like you're talking about the frequency and the vibration and stuff. Maybe somebody gets into one of these low states, or maybe these shadow people, maybe they're working on leaving their level. I don't know, just to pass it thought while you're talking about this horribly scary accounts. And this was at the age of 14 that started?
Yes, 14.
Okay. May I ask, if it's not too uncomfortable, what encouraged you to attempt this? What got you into all this?
Man, I came across the concept of out-of-body experiences on the internet one day, and I was so fascinated, and I really wanted to try it. And I read everything I could find about it, and I found a method to do it. So I gave it my best shot, and in less than a week I was able to do it.
Wow.
And I've always been very open-minded to the idea of there being more to this reality than just what we see here in the physical world. Right. And there being like spiritual reality. And I just wanted to explore that and, you know, learn as much as I could about it.
Man, that's great. That's a brave 14-year-old is what they
Brave or stupid?
well, these shadow people, that are always seeming, they always seem to be waiting right there. And you mentioned them trying to actually get a hold of you, or it felt like they were trying to get a hold of you.
Right.
Are they trying to occupy your actual body, or are they trying? What do you think their intentions were?
Yeah, that's hard to say. Now, about the idea of them trying to get into my body, it doesn't quite work like that, because when you have an out-of-body experience, you're not actually leaving your body empty. I mentioned that our consciousness exists like at many levels when I was talking about like the concept of the soul, right?
Right.
And so there is a level of your consciousness, an aspect of your consciousness that is still kind of integrated with the body. And it's almost like your consciousness like splits, or like it reflects into these higher dimensions. But you basically, your consciousness exists in multiple levels of reality simultaneously. And I've had this experience on multiple occasions where I'm aware of these multiple aspects of my own consciousness existing in different levels of reality at the same time. So I'm certain that this is the case, and that the physical body is never actually empty.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay.
It's pretty complex, but you know, over time you start to figure things out through, you know, experiments and experiences like that.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sorry I interrupted. I do have more questions, but I'll try to hold them until a little later on. Okay.
Okay. Well, so the shadow people weren't an issue anymore. You know, like I said, I began to just bypass that lower level, and I would project, you know, directly into a somewhat higher level. Certainly not what I would consider high on the entire spectrum, but you know, higher than where these shadow people were. But then I began encountering entities that were a lot more frightening than these shadow beings. And these entities looked like aliens, like a typical alien, like a gray alien, you know, like the big head, big black slanted eyes, like the small skinny body.
Yeah.
And so one of my first experiences with these aliens was during an out-of-body experience, and I was flying around the astral dimension, and I seemed to be attracted to this one house in the distance, like something was calling me there. And so I went into this house and I was looking around, and suddenly there was this alien with me, and its head looked like a giant bug, almost like a praying mantis.
Right.
And I was pretty scared. Like this fear just instantly hit me. But it was weird because it seemed like I was missing time, because suddenly this alien was gone, and I could tell that time had passed. And I knew something happened with this alien, and it was like my memory of it was blocked or like erased. Like I just couldn't access this memory of what happened, but I could feel it there. I knew something happened.
Right.
And I always got a bad feeling when I was trying to remember what happened, you know, even like weeks after this experience, like in the pit of my stomach, like something wasn't right. And you know, there's a reason why I couldn't remember this. And so this was my first experience with aliens, or, you know, entities that look like what we would consider aliens. Now, I've encountered these entities so many times in the astral dimension. I'm not going to say they're from another planet,
Right.
I know for sure that they exist and they operate in non-physical reality. Now, whether they're also physical beings, you know, like us, like we're in the physical world, but we can project into the astral dimension. Maybe they do the same, or maybe these entities are just always there, like that's their base level of reality.
Right.
I can't be sure about that, but so soon after this, I began being visited by aliens on a regular basis. Like this initial encounter kind of like triggered this new like phase, I guess you could say, in my practice, where instead of the shadow beings, now it was these aliens that were like stalking me. And a lot of times they would appear in the moments just before separating from my body. So what happens is that usually your consciousness will shift beyond the physical dimension just before the actual separation from the body occurs. So you'll be lying in the same space as your body, but your consciousness will already be in the astral dimension. So you'll already be perceiving the astral dimension before the separation takes place. So I would be in this state where I was essentially paralyzed, like I was stuck in my body, but at the same time, my consciousness was perceiving the astral dimension. Basically what happens during these experiences is your body falls asleep and your mind stays awake.
Yeah.
And that triggers the projection. And so, you know, my physical body's eyes would be closed, but I would be able to see the room around me through the closed eyelids, because now I'm on the astral level, you know. So I would begin perceiving the environment around me, and there would be one or more, sometimes an entire group of aliens next to me or all around me. Sometimes they'd be bent over, like looking closely into my eyes. And these situations were some of the most terrifying experiences that I'd ever had, like at that point in my practice.
Right.
Because, you know, my whole life I was afraid of aliens, especially as a kid, you know, like watching them in movies, like especially movies about like true stories of alien abductions. Like that stuff would just terrify me.
Yeah, man.
Like more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so now I'm basically like encountering these beings myself, and it's like a nightmare come true, essentially.
Well, what do they want?
Well, that's a good question.
Are they feeding off of your energy too, just like the shadow people, you think? Like they want that fear reaction?
Yeah, it's quite possible. In the beginning, I would kind of cut the experiences short just because I was just so overwhelmed with fear. And, you know, like I said, like you reach this state of fear, and then it's like a triggered effect that you just snap back into the body, you know, which is a good thing, because, you know, let's say you're out in the astral dimension and, you know, something like horrible is happening. Well, it's good that you don't have to kind of find your way back into your body, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's kind of like a protection mechanism. So in the beginning, the experiences would be cut short, but over time, I guess I gained enough courage to start to actually interact with these entities.
All right.
And I had some interesting experiences with them. On multiple occasions, they seemed to share certain knowledge and information with me. And it wasn't like I requested it.
Right.
They just showed me. A couple times they showed me some technology. You know, they seem to want to share this information with me. I don't know why. But you know, one time they showed me this technology they have, which basically records all knowledge gained, experienced, or registered by every living being in the entire universe.
Like the Akashic record.
Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
But somehow they extract this knowledge from living conscious entities. And another time they showed me this technology that they use, which actually tracks me, almost like a GPS type technology, but it doesn't track my physical body. They showed me that it actually tracks my energy body, which would make sense because, you know, they always seem to be aware of like where I was or when I was going to project from my body. And I would assume they use this technology on other people too.
Right.
I've had experiences with different, it appears different species of aliens or whatever you want to call these entities. The ones that I would usually encounter, which seem to stalk me and which I had, you know, the majority of negative experiences with. I don't know if you or any of your listeners are familiar with Whitley Strieber. He's an author. He's an alien abductee.
Yep.
And he has this one book called Communion. It's also a movie.
Yes.
And on the cover of the book, there's an image of the alien, this group of aliens that he would be abducted by.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically looked like a gray alien, but with light orange skin.
Right.
And this was actually almost exactly what these aliens look like. But I've had experiences with other types. Like I said, during one out-of-body experience, I was out in some kind of spacecraft with this group of aliens, and we were out in space, deep space, and these aliens actually had like a light blue skin.
Yeah.
And what happened is that we had this kind of telepathic connection that opened up between us, and they were sharing all of this information and knowledge with me. And a lot of it was so like advanced. It was beyond like my conscious mind's ability to like truly comprehend. Like during the experience, it was like I was in this state of awe, like all these insights were coming to me. But after the experience, sometimes it's really hard to really assimilate what you learn when you're out there.
Right.
But one like key piece of information that I did take from this is that they revealed to me that before this life that I'm living right now, I made some kind of agreement with this group of aliens to have some kind of relationship with them during this life.
Really?
Almost like a contract of sorts. And it's interesting because I've heard this from other people, from other alien abductees, other, you know, explorers of consciousness and things like that. And it seems to be almost like a common occurrence. You know, most people aren't aware of it, but like, you know, before this life, it's almost like we kind of construct a type of blueprint,
Right.
which kind of directs the course that we take in a general sense in this life, so that we can perhaps have the experiences that we need for whatever type of you know, growth that is required for us, like at this time.
Wow. So is it like, are there multiple lifetimes of this? Is it like a reincarnation thing?
Yeah, I've had some pretty incredible experiences that have revealed to me the nature of what is commonly called reincarnation. And it's a bit more complicated than the standard concept of, you know, you die and then you're born into a new body that dies, then you're in a new body. It's not quite that simple.
Right.
So a lot of these experiences in which I've received this knowledge have to do with what I call the higher self. So the higher self is essentially like the highest level of your spiritual being. So how this works is that who we know ourselves to be in this life is just a small part of a much larger consciousness. Similar to what I said about the soul, but we're only currently aware of like this small aspect of who we are. We're unaware of who we truly are at this higher level. So the higher self experiences the physical world through a multitude of different lives, different personalities, and different incarnations. And it's not just sequential, but it's also simultaneous. So this basically allows for the maximization of experience and growth and learning that can be attained from this particular level of reality that we're currently existing in. So during these experiences, I integrate or I merge with my higher self, and I experience what it's like to exist at this higher level of consciousness. And it's such a mind-blowing and beautiful and blissful experience. Like, it's truly beyond words, but in this state, you experience the fact that who you are at this higher level actually is like almost like a collection of all these different incarnations that have experienced life in the physical world at all different times throughout history. And at this higher level, you're all connected, like you're all one. So it is almost like a reincarnation type thing, except it's not actually you who is going and like entering a new body. It's a completely different individual, right? But you're connected at this higher level. And so essentially you are one with these other people and your higher self as a totality.
Wow. So we're part of the body, basically.
Yeah, I mean, what I've experienced is that we don't have the typical like Buddhist reality in terms of reincarnation,
Right.
where you got to keep coming back and back and back.
Right.
Because you also share the experiences of all the other individuals who you're connected with in your higher self, right? So there's no need for you to keep coming back, because you also have these other experiences at a higher level, if that makes sense.
It does. And that we're connected to these other selves, which are going through things simultaneously throughout time, right? So what you're saying? So like,
yeah, right.
There's a me right now connected to this higher self, and there's also another connected self connected to the higher self that's going through the Middle Ages or going through the building of the Great Pyramids, and we're all experiencing this stuff at the same time and connecting it to one collective source.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the level of the higher self, like as you get like deeper into spiritual reality, into non-physical reality, the concept of time, it basically no longer applies. So like at the level of your higher self, there is no like sequential time. It's like almost like everything is just like happening in that moment, regardless of like what time it is here in the physical dimension.
Right.
But yeah, so like maybe you and I are connected
Mhm.
in the same higher self. So essentially, like what that means is on that level, like we are of the same consciousness, you know. We're just not aware of it right now.
Right. That's very interesting. That's wild. And this knowledge that they're giving you, are you able to retain it in this life? Like, are there things that they've shown you that's helped you out in this life? Or is there a message, maybe, you know, like an overarching message that, you know, they've selected you in this physical form to present?
Right. As far as these aliens, like that particular group of aliens that told me that I have some agreement with, you know, I'm not sure exactly what kind of benefit I have received from having some kind of relationship with them.
Okay.
The thing is that we exist in so many different levels of reality, many of which we're unaware of. So it's totally possible that, you know, for example, I'm having these experiences with these entities that I'm just not aware of, you know. So during these experiences where I am aware of them, you know, during astral projection, you know, I'm tapped into that level of reality. But what I've discovered is that our consciousness operates simultaneously in so many different levels of reality, you know, many of which we're not aware of. So it seems like it's only after we reintegrate with this higher consciousness, which we're part of, that the majority of, you know, this knowledge and insight will be kind of made aware to us.
I got you. Yeah. Okay. So you're doing the groundwork now, and you'll get the knowledge and the rewards and see the benefit once you're reunited.
Yeah, pretty
Wow.
much.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep trying to explain things in, you know, like a 5th grade level when you're up here, you know, like a doctorate level. I'm trying to keep up, man. This is pretty intense stuff. And so this group of aliens, is this the peak? Is this the highest consciousness level that you've reached, you've attained, or have you went beyond these grays?
Yeah. In general, my experience with entities like this, they haven't been in the higher levels of consciousness and the higher levels of reality. The highest levels that I've attained have been so different from anything that you can really make sense of in physical concepts,
Okay.
that it's really hard to put the experiences into words. My experiences with my higher self, when I merge with this higher consciousness, those have been some of the most profound experiences that I've had. And I've also experienced a connection with what I perceive to be as God, and not just God, but like all of reality and all living things. And these types of states have been some of the highest levels of consciousness that I've reached. And during these states, it's so incredible. There's almost like a constant state of bliss that you feel that is just way beyond anything that you can experience, like in your physical body. and there seems to be this direct connection with truth, like the source of truth,
Right.
where it's like you just know things. This knowledge, it just comes to you, and there's no doubt that it's true. There's no second guessing when you're in that state.
Beautiful.
And you know, it's hard to truly understand what that's like just from this physical perspective, because we don't experience that here, you know.
But you know
So-
what? If you could just try your best to explain this God moment, and I'll promise I'll try my best to not make sense of it all. I'll just take the story and just let it be what it is. I won't try to break it down into anything. I just want to hear and share what you experienced.
Okay, sure. I mean, part of it is kind of intangible,
Mhm.
but the energy that you experience as yourself and as your consciousness is just on such a high level. You know, I think the word bliss is the closest we have to the feeling of love and connection that you can experience. And I think most people have not and will not experience this kind of bliss, like just grounded in the physical body. But that is a strong aspect of it. Sometimes it's so powerful and overwhelming that I literally feel like my consciousness is kind of like exploding, and like who I am, like who I know myself to be, is kind of just being like destroyed and like ripped away. And who I experience myself as during these experiences, it's almost like remembering who you truly are. And it's just the most incredible thing that I think anyone could ever experience. And, you know, during these experiences, where you are in terms of your location, like in non-physical reality, it gets really abstract and really unusual. So like a lot of times, like the dimension will be penetrated by this like beautiful heavenly music that is just beyond words, but way more incredible and beautiful than anything you could actually hear, like with some kind of physical world instrument.
Yeah.
And but not only that, but these sense perceptions, like you know, hearing, seeing, you know, colors, sounds, they manifest in like a multitude of different ways. So for example, like this music, you don't only hear it, but you see it. It's such a hard thing to describe.
Right.
But that's the way it is, you know. And like colors, like you hear colors.
Right.
And I think you get the idea.
I do.
It's a bit convoluted, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard people describe it just this way when they've had a near-death experience. You know, they see, you know, they ascended into what they perceived as paradise or heaven, and they describe it this exact same way. You know, that they can, you know, like they can feel the color, they can smell it. It's just so much more vivid. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful how you describe it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of similarities with near-death experiences and astral projection. I mean, the main difference between them is that during one, your body is dead, right?
Right.
And the other, your body is alive and healthy. But, you know, you're essentially doing the same thing. You know, your consciousness is projecting into higher realities.
Right.
So it's just a matter of where you're actually going.
Now, how do you get into this meditative state? Are you just laying down, just clearing your mind? Or is there something to focus on? And I don't mean any offense to it, but do you need, to take like psilocybin to get to this point, or is this all natural, just in your own consciousness?
Yeah. I mean, what I do is all natural.
Okay.
I know you can access similar states with, drugs and other things like that.
Right.
But like I mentioned before, essentially, you simply need to have your body fall asleep while your mind is awake.
Wow.
So, yeah, ideally you use a type of meditation which will allow the body to fall asleep and at the same time keep your mind awake. So there needs to be a focus, so your mind does remain aware, but your body also needs to be very relaxed, and you need to allow that to fall asleep. So when I first started, I was doing it at night before bed.
Okay.
And it would take quite a while to actually induce the projection. And, sometimes I would just fall asleep because, at night you're tired, you just want to go to sleep.
Right.
And, I learned that it's much easier and more effective to do it in the early morning, because in that state, your body and mind are already in the ideal states to, have the projection. So ideally, you want to do it a couple hours before you would normally wake up. So maybe after 5 or 6 hours of sleep, because in this state, your body is already very relaxed, and it's typically very easy for it to fall back to sleep. But your mind has already gotten some rest, so it's easier to keep it focused and aware during the process. So in the beginning, I used a particular technique in which you state affirmations, which are basically designed to keep your mind awake as your body falls asleep. So I would just say to myself, my body's asleep and my mind is awake. And as I was doing this, I would perform a third eye meditation, right? Basically what you do is you focus on the area between your eyebrows, which is where the third eye chakra is located. And this is said to act as like a bridge or a link to the subconscious mind, which is basically what is going to activate the affirmations, your subconscious mind. So you basically have your third eye absorb the affirmations that you're stating. And a lot of times the experience will happen almost automatically if you're able to program your subconscious mind effectively. And I mean, for me, that worked almost immediately. Like the first method that I was trying at night, it took almost a week for me to be successful. But this new method that I was using in the morning, it worked almost immediately. So I definitely recommend that. And there are different different details that, different techniques you can use for keeping the mind aware and allowing the body to fall asleep. And I actually explain pretty much every technique that I've used throughout the years in my book.
Wow.
So, you'll get a lot of good information from that. But yeah, that's the basic concepts. Keep your mind aware, allow your body to fall asleep. And what happens is that you experience your body essentially entering a state of paralysis, because that's what happens, when you fall asleep. it's kind of like a protection mechanism, so you don't physically like act out your dreams.
Right.
And this is what happens when, I'm sure you've heard of sleep paralysis, and perhaps you've experienced it. You wake up maybe in the middle of the night and you can't move. It's like you're stuck, you're paralyzed in your body.
Right.
And that's what's happening. Essentially, your mind is awakening and your body is still asleep. So it seems like you're paralyzed.
Wow.
So that's the state you initially enter just before the projection. And then at that point, either the separation happens almost automatically. And what will happen is you'll feel this state of vibrations, it's commonly called. And it just feels like this strong energy buzzing throughout your entire body. And this is essentially your energy body being activated and separating from the physical body. Now, sometimes this state of vibrations does not happen automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And so you will have to use another technique to induce that. And these techniques will involve some kind of sensation of movement. And basically what you want to do is you want to create this sensation of movement, without actually moving. So, for example, you'll imagine what it feels like to float up, or you'll imagine what it feels like to fall backwards or to roll to the side. And as you really focus on trying to feel this movement, that is going to trigger the separation.
That is wonderful. So at this point, you've been doing this for over 2 decades, right?
Right.
At this point, how easy is it for you to go into a higher consciousness?
At this point, I can do it in a matter of seconds. It's really just a matter of catching yourself in the ideal state.
Right.
And so this will be in the early morning. You can trick your body and mind into entering this state, like I said, very quickly. So one of my tricks is that when I wake up in the morning, I catch myself before I move. Typically, when you wake up, the first thing you do is you move in some way.
Right.
You roll to the side, or stretch out or something. So what you need to do is you need to become aware the moment that you wake up, so that you do not move. Because when you move, it kind of activates your physical body a little bit, energizes it a little bit, and it just becomes a little more difficult to re-enter that ideal state. So you catch yourself the moment you wake up, and you trick your body into falling back asleep by momentarily trying to fall back asleep. But it needs to be really quick and really subtle. And you need to remain aware as you do this. So you start to feel yourself fall back asleep almost instantly, but you catch yourself, and you kind of activate your mind in a way that it becomes completely fully aware again. Because to momentarily try to fall back asleep, you need to let your mind slip a little bit, but you can't let it slip completely into sleep. You need to catch yourself just at this sweet spot. And it takes practice, but eventually you'll be able to do this in a matter of seconds. And it's just so much easier than some of the other methods that could take up to an hour.
Wow. And that's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing all that. And there's something else that you had mentioned that it stuck out in my mind when you were talking about these grays and the way they were communicating and whatnot, these aliens. It seemed like I've heard something similar pertaining to like the disclosure that the Department of Defense had to give out. I saw a short video clip, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was that they yelled at. They got a hold of some senator or some high up official person, and they asked him how do you communicate? You know, how are they communicating with aliens? And he said, "Have you ever heard of ESP? It's kind of like that." You know, and that's all he had to say about it. And then he went on about his business. And you know, with Dr. Greer, I don't know if you're familiar with that, the CE5,
Yeah.
where they're doing a form of meditation in order to I don't say summon, that sounds kind of dark, but maybe it is dark, but to kind of get these things to interact and to appear. And I just say that to say I see a connection with what your experiences are on this higher level or lower consciousness level. I see other people saying something similar, you know, so that lends a lot of credibility and validation to everyone. What you're saying helps me to understand and believe what these other people are saying.
Yeah, definitely. You know, in the astral dimension and in non-physical reality in general, this is the means of communication, basically telepathy, you know. We don't have like physical vocal cords out there, you know.
Right.
All that is just bypassed, and it's basically a direct communication out there. So yeah, I mean, that happens with these entities that look like aliens, and it happens with, you know, other, you know, people. You know, I've met other astral explorers out there, you know, like me. I've met, you know, my deceased relatives, and you know, the communication, it just happens the same. It's a universal thing out there.
Whoa! So you've talked to other, say, you're blowing my mind. You've talked to deceased relatives or other travelers
Yes.
while in that state.
Yeah. One of my first encounters was actually in the early days of my practice. And I met my deceased great-grandmother. And at that time, she had died several years before that.
Right.
And I wanted to see if I could contact her while out of body. And so I projected from my body, and I screamed, "I want to see my great-grandmother." And you know, at that point in my practice, I started to realize that if I stated an intention to have a particular experience when I was out of my body, sometimes it would happen. You know, not all the time, but sometimes it was like it would trigger things to be set into motion, and it was like I would just suddenly be in this experience. So what happened was I stated my intention to see my great-grandmother, and all of a sudden it was like I was blasted off with this tremendous force, and I found myself out in space, and I was flying past stars and planets. And it was like I was being pulled by this force.
Right.
And you know, this is kind of like what I said. Sometimes you state your intention, and you're just like brought into the experience that you want to have. So it's like, it's not like, oh, I knew that my great-grandmother was out in space and I intentionally flew out there. It was like,
Right.
I was just pulled there, you know.
Wow.
It was like, I think, I mean, in my experience, we have this connection with our higher self. And you know, what happens is when you state your intention, you know, your higher self, it's such an incredibly like powerful and intelligent and, you know, just incredible being that it can create these experiences for you, or it can direct you to have the experience at a level that you're not aware of, you know. So you're not intentionally doing this or that. It's happening for you by your higher self. So yeah, I'm flying through space, and then I see a light in the distance, and I'm getting closer to the light. And as I get closer, I start to realize this isn't just a light. This is my great grandmother, and it was like she was radiating with this light. And so, you know, we interacted, and we had this conversation. It was just such like a beautiful experience. And yeah, after that, I had some experiences with my deceased great grandfather too, years after that, because at that time he was still alive, but you know, he eventually died as well. And I had some incredible experiences with him. In one of them, he actually shared this knowledge that he acquired like after his death. So like he's now, you know, in these higher spiritual realities, and he gave me this knowledge that he acquired. And again, it was just such an incredible thing. And this is similar to what I said before. Sometimes the level of information that you obtain in these states is just so far beyond your normal mind's like ability to truly comprehend.
Right.
It's like, so the knowledge is kind of like stored in a higher level. And, you know, when you come back to the body, you just can't access it, but you know it's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's wild. I love this. Yeah, I know I said 1 hour, but you blew my mind in the last 5 minutes. You know what I mean, man? And it kind of reminds me of Edgar Casey. Are you familiar with Edgar? You know how he could go into this other place and pull out all this information and help so many people. And I wouldn't ever suggest somebody take such a beautiful gift as you have and, you know, exploit it for money or whatever like that. But, you know, I wonder if you have, or if you could, you know, like where you set your intentions to talk to your deceased relatives. Have you ever tested it to see if you could do that for someone else's family? Like, you know, have someone come to you, they need you to reach out to somebody for them. Have you ever put yourself in that situation, communicate, and then be able to retain enough to relay information to someone, not like necessarily like a medium, but for lack of better words, to be that conduit?
Right. No, I've never tried that. No one's really asked me to do that.
Right.
You know, it's possible that, you know, there could be something to that.
Wow.
I mean, typically when you want to meet a person in the out of body state, you need to know them. You need to have an idea of who they are.
Right.
There's something that can be called like an energy signature, right? And it's basically like your sense of who that person is on an energetic level, which kind of translates into the astral dimension in a way that it's basically how you identify the person.
I got you. That makes sense.
So if it's a total stranger, I'm not sure how well that would work. But yeah, I'm sure it's definitely worth giving a shot someday, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That's just incredible, Vince. I appreciate you telling me about all this, and tell people, if you don't mind, how they can get a hold of you, how they can get a hold of your book. Just any kind of thing, anything you want to plug, this would be a perfect opportunity to do that.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I would recommend everyone heading over to Amazon.com. My book is available in paperback, Kindle, Audible, audiobook. any format that you prefer. And yeah, again, the book is called Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming, Spiritual Revelations and Out-of-Body Experiences in Higher Dimensions. And my name is Vincent Field. And yeah, I would recommend everyone check this out, because who we are is so much more than who we actually experience ourselves to be, you know, in this physical body, in this life. And actually having this like firsthand experience, it really is life-changing. And I've been able to help other people just from the insights and the knowledge that I've received, you know, regarding who we are and what this reality is all about, and, you know, how things work on these higher levels. And it really is just, in the least, very motivating. And, you know, I've had friends who, you know, were suffering from like depression and very nihilistic and, you know, just hopeless. And I saw I was really able to give them like real encouragement and kind of help them improve their perspective of life. Not even with them having these experiences, but just sharing my own with them. So yeah, this stuff is helpful in more ways than one, but you know, caution is also required, just because it's similar to this physical world. There are good people, there are bad people. You can have good experiences and bad experiences, and it's the same out there in the astral dimensions. You know, it's not all, you know, angels and love. You know, there is, I guess you can call it the dark side too.
Right.
You know, there are negative entities out there. So you also, you know, need to be wise in your approach, and be cautious as to, you know, avoid, you know, certain entities and, you know, certain experiences that could have a negative effect.
Man, absolutely. Something to take heed. Don't take this stuff lightly, right? Take it seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Vince, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. You have you knocked it out of the park, bro. I've loved talking to you. I'm buying your book. I'm doing it today. I should have already done it. I should have already read it so I could have more to talk to you about, but you sold me, man. I got to know more. I have so many friends and family members that are all about astral projection, and they've been talking to me about it and wanting me to get into it. So I'm buying the book. I'm going to give it a shot, and I hope you don't send me off the deep end, because I'm almost there as it is. Man.
That's awesome, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, keep in touch. You know, I can give you some pointers when you actually you know, start getting into your own practice.
Yeah.
You know, I help mentor some people in certain groups online, like on Discord and things like that. So yeah, I'm happy to help, and you know, maybe we can have a part two. We'll have another discussion in the future.
I would love that. I would love that. Thank you so much, man. You have a good day, and God bless.
All right, thank you. You too.
Thank you.